Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. We're going to get started now. So I just want to make sure if everyone can hear me okay. If you can you just type into the questions box that you can hear me? Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dawn. So I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jana Fung. I'm the product marketer here at AdStage. And today's webinar is what B2B marketers need to know about full funnel ads and attribution. I do need to apologize. Aaron Bird, the CEO of Bizible, was supposed to join us today, but he had actually a family emergency. So we actually we are joined by Dave Rigotti, the Director of Marketing at Bizible, and we have Mike from the marketing team here at AdStage. He's the Director of Demand Generation. And AdStage is an all-in-one advertising platform. It supports full campaign creation and reporting for your search and social ad campaigns. So we support Google AdWords, Bing, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn ads. And AdStage is the only self-service solution that supports all 5 of these networks. Today we're partnering with Bizible for the webinar, What B2B Marketers Need to Know About Full Funnel Ads and Attribution. Bizible makes B2B marketing attribution software and has hundreds of customers around the world. So before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few household items. We are recording this webinar, so if for some reason you missed something, we will be sending it at the end of by the end of the day. And then if you have any questions, we are saving some time for questions at the end, so just feel free to type into the questions box and we'll get to it later. So in the meantime, follow us on Twitter. We're at AdStage and at Bizible. And I'd like to now introduce our speakers. So like I said, we have Mike and Dave on the call. Mike is the Director of Demand Generation at AdStage. He has over 7 years of experience with PPC Advertising. And prior to AdStage, he led a Google AdWords premier agency, and he's also generated pipeline as an in-house B2B marketer as well. He can be found on Twitter, at Lonohead is his handle. And then we also have Dave Rigotti. He's based in Seattle and is the Director of Marketing at Bizible. He's also the editor of PipelineMarketer.com, and previously he spent a few years on the Bing marketing team at Microsoft. So he's on Twitter as well. His handle is at @drigotti. And without further ado, let's get started, Mike.
Excellent. Well, I first just want to thank Dave Rigotti for joining us today. Dave is the mad scientist behind the scenes at Bizible. He started when I believe they were a small, humble team of about 7. They've since kind of flushed out to about 40. Dave and I go way back. I will often ping him at times, and he's very nice and responsive on bouncing ideas off of each other. And he's really helped me personally through some of the attribution woes that I've had. And just to go over that, I'm sure many of you have seen the kind of marketing landscape, the Lunascape, as far as MarTech is concerned. And we know the journey of back in 2012, where marketers maybe only had about 300 or so tools to about 1,800 today to choose from, and that budget really starting to shift from kind of traditional to digital, and you start to see more of the CIOs and CTOs. That budget is shifting towards CMOs today. And as this landscape has grown, it's become ever elusive and harder for marketers to kind of track their efforts. Now marketing is dealing with SEO, they're dealing with social and social listening. They have PPC and inbound going on as well, and they have to track that all the way through CRMs, through marketing automation systems, and through all these disparate systems, we have different KPIs. And at the end of the day, this has made attribution very cumbersome at times and very hard to understand what's actually going on. So I'm really excited to partner with Dave today, pick his brain on different attribution models, what's kind of the best for B2B, and then talk about kind of the pros and cons of each model. So without further ado, I'll talk about kind of the challenges with PPC. So traditionally PPC and marketers overall, a lot of times we just didn't have visibility into the full funnel. So at the end of the day, we were all about top of funnel, net new lead generation. So new leads going into your database. But that was very short-sighted. And Dave, I don't want to steal his thunder, is going to get into a lot of those pitfalls. Back in the day, marketers weren't tied to revenue, and you see that change is kind of happening, taking place in a lot of B2B organizations. We used to do a handoff. Once the lead was generated, we passed it over to sales, and we went about our day optimizing towards number of leads and cost per lead. And we'll get into a moment why that might be a little bit short-sighted and not really impacting the business to the full degree that it should. So without further ado, I wanted to get into a little bit more of what this causes. And so when we're looking at what we call channel bias, if you're not looking through the full funnel and you're looking at attribution, a lot of times you are overstating the importance of a single channel. So oftentimes in marketing divisions, we may be stewarding over just one channel, such as paid media or something like social or content marketing. And without having kind of a philosophy about tracking in a holistic picture of the entire funnel journey, a lot of times we're overstating the worth of a single channel. And just for example of that would be something like retargeting, where if you look at it as an isolated channel, it looks like it's performing exceptionally well, very low cost per lead as it's taking that traffic. But you need to look at it in the context of all the different channels, all those original sources, helping and aiding to getting that retargeting pool. So before I get too much into it, wanted to pass the torch to Dave, who can kind of explain some of those challenges today, and then we'll later reveal all the different attribution models. So Dave, thanks for joining us. Take it away.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm really excited about this webinar. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and as a former paid media manager, this is something that I care deeply about. So yeah, Michael, you're exactly right. How you pick your paid social channels will kind of influence your attribution model and vice versa. And this is why measurement is really key. You wouldn't realize you had channel bias without good measurement. It's really the lifeblood of marketing teams, and especially for media managers. And for a long time, the key to a successful brick and mortar store, for example, was location, location, location. I've heard that so many times throughout my career, where people just said, okay, it's all about the location. And for media managers and for software companies, I think that adage is really now changed to data, data, data. And for marketing teams, that really means solid measurement. So I'm excited to get in a little bit later in this webinar and kind of talk about what good measurement means, how you get started, and then kind of most importantly, what you do with that measurement with your attribution, so you can make sure that you're making the right decisions and not flying blind.
Excellent. So thank you, Dave. So just to give you guys kind of an overview of what we'll be covering today, first we'll introduce the concept of pipeline marketing. You've probably heard of like pipeline and account-based marketing before, but we'll actually reveal what the definition is. So it's kind of a mind shift of going from lead generation, and that's all you're thinking about, to start looking at the holistic picture, and Dave will kind of reveal all of that. I'll then kind of talk about how that can be aligned from a paid media perspective onto every step of the funnel. We'll talk about the drawbacks of what most of the native networks are reporting on post-click attribution, and then we can start looking at the different models, and at the very end, you can pick Dave's brain, and we can go over some of your deep burning questions, and he's happy to reveal some of his personal insights into it. So Dave, if you don't mind walking us through, I know you guys started like pipelinemarketer.com, I believe. Tell us what the hell it is. We hear about it all the time. What is that definition?
Yeah. Pipeline marketing is something that I care a lot about. And in fact, this is probably the simplest slide that I'll share with you today, and it says a lot. For many companies, their funnel really looks something like this. They have a separate marketing funnel and a separate sales funnel. So the marketing team is living in kind of the lead to sales qualified bucket of this, and then that sales team starts at the opportunity and goes to the deal. And so you have these separate funnels where there's this handoff kind of happening in between, but ultimately each of the teams are operating in their own areas. And as a result, the marketing team is optimizing for what's the marketing cycle, not the actual desired outcome, which is revenue. Um, in I'll give an example of kind of how ridiculous this is, because it is like a profound, I think, change in mindset and has led to a lot of great decisions here at Bizible. So football season starting soon. I'm based in Seattle, so I have to represent football a little bit. And the analogy I'll use here is I think for football is I think a lot about the demand and media teams as being the offensive coordinator of a football team. So just like how a offensive coordinator is trying to get points on the board, so is a media person. Now imagine where if the offensive coordinator was just trying to get people to the 50-yard line, just like halfway through the process, I guess, for his football team, and then it handed off to someone else. But you probably have like different strategies and you make different decisions if you were a football team, if that was the case. And I think that's exactly what's going on here with marketing teams and sales teams too. They're both kind of living in their own world and optimizing for only the piece that they see, rather than that entire funnel and the desired outcome, which, like in the case of football, is obviously touchdowns, and for marketers, it should be revenue.
Dave, I love that analogy, saying that, in the past, marketers only brought it to the 50-yard line. They weren't actually going, seeing things through the full cycle. Case in point, I'm sure everyone on here, if you've done any kind of paid media or even just inbound overall, you may look at the end of your month and you see your reports and you see conversion rates are up, your cost per lead is down, your total conversions are up, and you think at the end of the day that you are absolutely killing it. You're doing a very good job, and you may not actually, then you go and talk to sales, and you're not seeing that impact that you thought you would have on revenue. So leads might be up, but what you're not understanding with that full picture might be something like lead quality, or there's other factors. So with that, I wanted to reveal, Dave, your kind of intro to pipeline marketing. So how can marketers start to think more holistically about this picture?
Yeah, you're exactly right. This whole concept of looking to revenue and looking beyond leads is the core concept of pipeline marketing. And it sits in contrast a little bit to lead generation. And lead generation is something that's been around since the 60s, and it's been really, I think, ingrained in B2B marketers' head that it's all about leads. We got to generate more leads. We got to generate more leads. And we've got to back up. We've got to unwind a little bit from that. It's really a legacy idea at this point. With all the data that you were talking about in the MarTech space, just AdWords wasn't even around when lead generation started. Like, everything has changed, and I think we really have to change our mindset here. And so pipeline marketing is about optimizing for the entire funnel and thinking about not just leads, but what's ultimately going to be the right decisions to drive revenue. And I think a core piece to this is, like, as media managers, we think a lot about data and driving revenue, but the other kind of piece to this is understanding that it's a lot more than just the data. And it's a really big culture change too. I think it's driven by the marketing team. They really have to get on board for this, but a lot of internal struggles that companies are facing between sales and marketing, I think, stems from this idea of they're focusing on leads and lead generation, not ultimately the ultimate goal, which is revenue. And in organizations that are pipeline marketing organizations, when the sales team and the marketing team are driving the same thing, you kind of share in your success and your failures too, and you don't kind of play the blame game that happens pretty often when you have these different sets of goals.
I think what I love having you on personally is you guys practice what you preach. So I know that your KPIs for the internal marketing team is actually like opportunities closed and actually realized revenue. So you see a lot of these organizations start to make that shift. It's really interesting now that marketers are now held towards revenue and have revenue goals. So part of that, I wanted to, looking at pipeline marketing as a whole, how does this kind of fit within the paid media world? So before, as Dave was revealing, we were just focused on things like marketing qualified lead or even sales qualified lead. And those were the numbers that we were dead set on hitting. As we kind of expand our view, we're now held to kind of pipeline numbers, revenue numbers. How do you kind of look at your AdWords and, your PPC accounts from a different lens? So with that, this is just to give an example. It's not like a firm example, but you should start to look at aligning your PPC channels, like your networks and your campaigns, into how they can help accelerate each one of these stages. So for example, for lead generation, a lot of the times your sales guys are going after specific target accounts or industries. So why not go on LinkedIn and target specific job titles and those companies as well, and help get those decision makers and influencers into your database, into your pipeline. Then use things like social channels such as Facebook and Twitter, where you start doing what is known as custom audiences. So based on emails in your database, you can target those exact people on the social networks and serve up some relevant content, really help nurture them through that funnel and decision-making cycle. And then finally, you start doing things like search, very bottom of the funnel. When they're ready to buy, they're actively looking for your service or product, and you start coupling that with something like some retargeting as well to help drive that conversion. But not only that, as they're going through the decision cycle, that you're constantly putting your brand in front of those top decision makers. So at the end of the day, when they're talking to that sales rep, they know who you are. So that's just a little bit more about aligning your PPC channels to each stage of the funnel. So you're looking holistically at the entire pipeline, opposed to in the past where we were just looking towards about lead to sales qualified, only about 50%, or that, to the 50-yard line, to Dave's point.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about this slide, Michael, that I'll just chime in on is that previously we were talking about kind of channel bias and how, depending on the attribution model that you're using, you may make different decisions based on just how the different channels kind of fit into the funnel. This is taking that, now that you have measurement, you're taking a full funnel approach and making it a positive for your organization. Like, you can start to put them in their right place versus kind of having them all try to drive the same thing, which is leads, and they're not effective for, honestly, like a lot of channels.
Let's talk about that. Now that we're looking more at the full entire pipeline, as a B2B marketer, what metrics should you really be focused on? So you guys, I love your preach of kind of lead generation is dying or it's dead, meaning, the look at just net new names or cost per lead is just not enough. So help us to better understand where B2B marketers should be focusing their KPIs and attention.
Yeah, and this is this can get unwieldy very fast. As marketers start to look at different stages of the funnel, they start making these connections between all these MarTech systems, from their marketing automation system to their CRM to the ad networks. A lot of times it can be data overload. So I really recommend organizations kind of step back and say, what's my goal here? What am I trying to drive? And decide what's the most important thing for their organization. Here are some of my favorite metrics that we looked at. Almost all come back to revenue. And for those channels where we say aren't generating a lot of revenue from those channels, we'll just go one step up further in the funnel. So we'll look at opportunities, or if there's not enough opportunity generated yet, we'll try to project out what it'll be. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can get really close to revenue, but say you're not generating the revenue just yet, you can start to proxy and still be very focused on it, but not have to have those dollars coming in to optimize your media. So I think, as long as you're focused on the end game, then you're in a great spot.
And I love that you're talking about these best metrics. And when you look at them, they're very aligned with sales. So you are now speaking the same language as sales, where a lot of times marketers were talking leads, sales were talking about prospects and opportunities and contacts. So this kind of puts everything, the entire organization in alignment. Love it. So let's now talk about, when we're talking about each one of the networks, a lot of times what the networks reveal is something called, post-click attribution. So Dave, do you mind revealing to us maybe the pitfalls of that model?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to go on a little story here, but I promise I'm going to bring it back to marketing. So my story starts out with about 3 weeks ago, I bought a house, and I wanted to move some plants around in our yard. We just got a dog, and I wanted to give him some kind of different areas. So I went on Amazon and just bought a couple of shovels. And the two shovels I bought were one with a flat edge and one with a pointed edge. And it ended up that the one with the flat edge showed up at my door first. So naturally, I picked that up and I tried moving some plants around. And then after sweating for a little while, it was like kind of working. I was working very hard and I started to get the plants out of the ground. Um, I started to realize that like maybe this isn't the best shovel for the job. And I really needed that pointed shovel to get under the roots and lift these plants up and get them out of the ground and move them to just a better spot in the yard. And I think this is really what's happening with B2B marketers who are using conversion tracking that's being provided by the ad networks. And I'll explain why here in a second. And that's because this conversion tracking, much like that flat edge shovel, was made for a different purpose. In this case, that conversion tracking by the ad networks was really made for B2C advertising. But B2B marketers use it anyways because it's convenient. Much like my shovel, it's just there, it's ready to get picked up, and it was kind of screaming like, use me, use me, use me. And I get it. It's easy. It kind of works. In fact, it works pretty good for if you're a really small company. And in some cases, it may be like just totally good enough. But as you grow, you'll realize you're spending more and more time like with this shovel that's not really working, and it only gets worse as you grow and over time. And the reason is there's this critical flaw, well, beyond the obvious that it's only looking at leads and not tracking revenue. And that critical flaw for B2B companies is that it's double counting. And this is because B2B companies often have multiple sessions involved in the buying process. You know, when you're buying $1,000 a month software, you're going to investigate that a little bit more than your toothbrush. So as you start to build up these sessions of people visiting your site, they're probably going to be coming from different places. Let's take an example of somebody coming from Facebook and somebody coming from AdWords. And say there was a click for each of these that was part of the purchase path. If you're using the conversion tracking from each of these ad networks, and this person bought your product, both AdWords and Facebook are going to count that as conversion. And this is really just because they don't know the others exist. And of course, they have a vested interest in of showing as many conversions as possible. So this is why it's really important to have a dedicated system or tool that's tracking conversions outside of the ad networks, whether it's AdStage, something else, and not having the ad network have that view into the conversions because they have that vested interest in showing, I guess, the best possible scenario versus what may have actually happened. So it's really important to be thinking about that when you're developing your marketing systems and your measurement. It might be good for your company, but as you grow, it's going to become more and more of a problem.
So you were revealing now like this problem with single touch, and this slide stops me in my tracks. I've kind of heard the context behind it, but I'd love you to reveal the audience for those who kind of historically manage PPC campaigns, out of the native networks using their conversion tracking. This should scare you. So Dave, you mind giving some context here?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about channel bias before, and just now I'm talking about the post-click conversion tracking. And we wanted to understand like how can we quantify that problem? And this does a great job of quantifying channel bias between first touch and a last touch attribution. So the most two extreme ends of any attribution model. And we found that depending on the attribution model that you choose, you're going to have 2.5 times difference in social, almost a little more than 1.5 times in direct traffic, and 1.4 in search, just depending on kind of how the attribution model that you're choosing. So based on this, you may be under or overweighting different channels, and that's really the crux of the problem with channel bias. And if you're only looking at that kind of single touch attribution.
And this goes back to when I thought at times that I was doing exceptionally well. So I would go to each network, I would pull out a report into Excel, I would count the total conversions across AdWords, being Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., and look at my cost per lead. And the problem with that model that you're revealing here is a lot of times we're over counting, we're overstating the actual impact to the business. So where I thought I had thousands of conversions, maybe it was just only a couple hundred leads. And so this slide particularly really resonates with me. And then it really reveals the need for better attribution. So with that, Dave, you talked about you kind of grazed against the single touch attribution, and there's additional models as well. Do you mind kind of giving us additional details on each model and what might be kind of the best use case?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about single touch attribution. There's of course multi-touch attribution, and if in the next couple slides I'll be talking about the multi-touch attribution model that I recommend for most B2B companies, which is W-shaped. And then a unique aspect to B2B companies, especially if you're at an agency, this gets really hard, but needs to be something you're thinking about, is account-based attribution. So how you, in a B2B environment or a B2C environment, you have one purchaser, and in B2B you have multiple. So how you kind of interact and collect that data will have big impacts in how you're measuring your marketing and also with making those decisions. So I'll get into that in a couple of slides as well. So for here, when you're designing a multi-touch attribution model, you really need to think about what are the key transitions that you want to be optimizing for. And for B2C, this is really easy. It's the sale. Oftentimes, the click is the same. That one last click is the click that drove the sale. But as we know, B2B, it's a little bit more complex. And when we're designing the attribution model that we wanted to use at Bizible and kind of our customers were asking for, we sat down, we said, okay, what are these three transitions, or what are these transitions? And we found three. There's the very first visit to your website. So this is the anonymous visitor, the first time they've heard about you. The next big one is when that anonymous visitor raises their hand, they say, here's my contact information. You now know who I am, and you can start selling me or emailing me. And this is when the lead is created. And then the last touch here, the last big conversion, is when it's generated an opportunity, when this person has completed the marketing phase, and now they're ready to be handed off to sales. And so when designing an attribution model, we found that these three stages apply to most B2B companies, in fact, almost all, and should be getting the right, or the most credit, if you will, for that revenue or for that purchase. And this led us to designing the W-shaped attribution model, where, as you can see here, it's very similar to the U-shaped, and it's kind of drafted off of that. Whereas if you're familiar with U-shaped, you'd be giving credit to the first visit and to the lead. We kept that going to the opportunity touch because it was an underrepresented marketing touch in most attribution models. And so in W-shaped attribution, you give 30% of the revenue credit to the touch that drove the visit, the touch that drove the lead, the touch that drove the opportunity, with the remaining 10% applied across all the other touches. And for most organizations, this is going to smooth out all that channel bias that we were talking about before, and even start to give a new view into your marketing performance. And a great example of this is giving credit to the channels where it historically hasn't gotten the credit before. And The classic example of that is email, where it doesn't even start until the lead is created. You can't even start your email. So if you were using a first touch attribution model, uh, revenue, email and retargeting would never get any credit. So this starts to smooth out those channel bias problems that Michael was talking about before, and we find is an attribution model that works for most B2B organizations.
I love this model personally because you're finally starting to give credit towards the nurture side, which a lot of times, as you were mentioning with email and the other mediums, just simply wasn't really tracked. You were looking at maybe open rates, but you didn't really understand the impact it was having to overall pipeline. And now you can give something like content a revenue number, which is pretty unique overall. So this is an absolute amazing model.
Yeah, I think it's the first time, or kind of one of the first moments in attribution where we're starting to see B2B companies not just take what was made for B2C and then like try to hack it or try to make it work for them in a B2B environment. We're seeing that now with account-based marketing and all these account-based attribution, and I think we're in a really big moment for B2B, and I'm so excited to be here as a B2B marketer because this is a great moment. There's never been a better time to be a better B2B marketer.
So leading into that, the
yeah,
account-based attribution, I know you're actually headed to Atlanta very soon to give a talk on it and kind of what that model looks like. I hear a lot about it in the industry, account-based marketing, everyone from John Miller of Marketo kind of starting his own thing. What is it and what does this model kind of entail?
yeah, exactly. It's account-based marketing has been around for so long, but in the last kind of year or so, very wisely, companies and people have woken up to its value. So in account-based marketing, instead of going out and bidding on keywords and taking anyone who comes in and searches for that keyword and you'll take all those clicks, you're only looking at and targeting specific companies. So you say, okay, I don't want these clicks, I want these companies. So it's a little bit of a change in how you approach your marketing. And this can be really easy to get started. Like you could say, here are the 10 companies of the logos I want on my homepage or something. Now the key here then is like, how do you go back and measure that? It's no longer about clicks, it's about companies. You have to really kind of change up how you're approaching your measurement and ultimately optimizing your marketing. And the key here is doing account-based attribution. And this is why I think for us, Salesforce is one of my favorite tools. And if you're at an agency and you don't have access to your client's CRM, try to get it, or try to find out if they have company data in our Marketo or other marketing automation systems. Because to do account-based attribution and to correctly, you need to know of all the people, which ones are in this company. Because the person doing the researching is probably different than the person who's going to use it, and then is almost always different than the decision maker. And if you weren't doing account-based attribution and you were just doing click-based attribution, you'd likely be only looking at the decision maker because they would be the last step or the last person who maybe signed off on the deal. And you start to underweight the more top of the funnel activities that are happening with the researcher and the users. So it's really important to get access to that data if you don't have it. So you can start to group people together as a whole rather than just doing marketing to individual people. It's now about individual companies.
And I think this is I love this model because a lot of times this is a source of tension between sales and marketing. A lot of times in the past, we would just look at where the opportunity was created. And a lot of times that opportunity was associated with the decision maker. So case in point, you might have a VP of marketing who signs off on a brand new piece of software. Sales is saying marketing never touched that VP. There was no touch point from marketing on that VP. But when you actually look at the account record and you start to understand all the players, well, actually, marketing may have influenced that marketing managers. So like you might have gotten a marketing manager or a marketing director to download some of your content, to attend some of your webinars, and they were actually the influencers of that VP making that decision. So in this model, both sales will get the credit for closing that VP, but we can go back and we can attribute marketing for influencing that marketing manager and marketing director that holistically had an impact on that close one opportunity. So this is an amazing model of where kind of B2B is progressing. And to Dave's point, this sheds a lot more into what's actually working.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Dave and Mike. That was a fantastic webinar. Very innovative strategies here. I wanted to save this time that we have left over for any questions that that are coming in from the audience. So just give me a second while I pull up the questions box here, and we'll start taking questions now. So we do have a question from Mary. She's asking, since you've become revenue focused, what changes have you made to your marketing, and has there been anything that you've seen and has there been anything that's been surprising? Dave, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, exactly. So before we started with the W-shaped model, we were looking at everything at a first click approach, and then when we connected that to revenue, we started to realize one, a little bit of the channel bias, but two, just how much the top of the funnel is contributing to revenue, and honestly, it was a lot more than I thought. A fantastic example of what we found was how great LinkedIn is, LinkedIn ads. If you look at LinkedIn ads compared to like Facebook ads, the cost per click is almost always higher. It's like in many of our cases, the click is 10 times higher for an ad on LinkedIn than it is on Facebook. But when you start tracking that down to revenue, you find that LinkedIn ads convert way more or at a way higher rate than Facebook ads. So that led us to like quadrupling down on LinkedIn ads. In fact, like we don't even do Facebook ads anymore. And we found kind of similar things with paid search too. But I think that one of the biggest for us was this realization that after the click, there was a lot of magic happening with LinkedIn ads, and it's been a big piece to our business.
Great. Mike, do you have any perspective on your experience using revenue-focused attribution models or marketing strategies?
Yeah, I think, well, overall, my job has become a lot more difficult. Before, I used to admittedly get away with things like just reporting on total leads. Now I'm held and I sit directly with sales, and I'm held to a percentage of their quota. So it makes my tactics completely different as well as I start to understand what the true return on ad spend is and marking that back to the channel. And you'll find that a lot of times it takes multiple touch points in B2B because the funnel isn't always quite as linear as you'd think. It's people hop through different stages. You might have someone in like your graveyard or what they what you thought was closed lost opportunity. They get revived right back, and then it's taken maybe 7 or so touch points to get them to that closed won status, and revealing which cadence kind of help that. I think what's really opened my eyes is the mix between marketing automation systems, so what you're doing with your drip, nurture, and email, and pairing that nicely with your paid media ads. That's where I've seen the most lift, and it's really opened my eyes the most. In the past, I used to really not talk to the marketer that was kind of stewarding over email. We were two separate kind of divisions within marketing, and now we're very aligned in that aspect. So that's where I think I've seen it's opened my eyes the most.
Great. We do have one more question. I think this one's for you, Dave. It's from Henry. He's asking about W-shaped attribution and why that would be better than something that's algorithmic or dynamically created from an attribution model standpoint. Which would you recommend to be best?
Yeah. This is a question I get asked like quite a bit. Like generally, marketers' view on attribution models is that a one size fit all isn't going to work for them. Uh, the and you're right a little bit. The an algorithmic model or a totally custom model um, is in some cases the perfect model for an organization. However, there's a couple of challenges that comes along with that. The biggest being it's really hard to implement. Um, not only like not only do you have to get your systems connected and working to do that, but I think the biggest challenge is getting the teams on board. So when there's a custom model, you have to then go convince everyone that the credit that you've applied for that channel is the right credit that they should be getting. So that means sitting someone down and saying, yeah, your efforts are I'm undervaluing or I'm gonna devalue some of your efforts this month because this is what we want to have in our attribution model. So you're gonna have these like really bad kind of culture moments with a custom model. The other thing that's not great about custom models is um, they can influence the way you do your marketing. So in a custom model, if you kind of went in there and you said, okay, great, this should get more credit, you're going to start making changes based on your marketing. So instead of having your marketing or your attribution influence your marketing mix, your marketing mix is kind of influencing your attribution model. So you're saying, hey, we're doing a big display push this month. Let's give it the credit it deserves by kind of getting in there and tweaking our attribution model a bit. So that's a case where the kind of view has shifted from your attribution model informing your marketing to your marketing informing your attribution model, which is it should be a one-way street. You don't want to get in there too much and kind of be playing around with things. But for most of the cases, it's really just about kind of the ease of implementation. It's quite challenging. I always recommend companies when they're starting out with attribution to take a crawl, walk, run approach. So if you're really small, what you get with your marketing automation systems and kind of a single touch attribution model is like probably going to be okay. And then as you get a little bit bigger, you start to dabble in U-shaped and you start to dabble in W-shaped. And for most companies, that's going to be good enough for them. But and in fact, like even our Fortune 500 customers are using out-of-the-box models and not a custom model. So it's really about like kind of weighing the trade-offs of what you get with custom models, but the biggest is usually the ease of implementation piece.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Dave. And Mike, is that how you view custom attribution models as well? Do you have a similar viewpoint?
I've learned personally a lot from bouncing off ideas off of Dave and looking at the out of the box models. They're a good way to understand, take a different look at attribution, make some tweaks. But at the end of the day, usually you're going to have to cater it to some degree to be custom to your business. Each business model is not the same depending on your organization size, the complexity of steps, and those kind of pieces, and like what systems you're using, to be honest. So I think out of the box attribution models are fantastic to kind of get the ball moving. Then you take that model and tweak it to make it work for your business and your internal KPIs. So I completely agree with Dave's point.
Great. Well, thanks so much. I think those are all the questions that we had for the webinar today. But if you guys think of any more, you can ask us on Twitter. Dave is at drigotti, and then Mike is at lonohead on Twitter. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any other questions later on. But we will be sending the recording to everyone at the end of the day. So make sure to look out for that. And I just want to thank Dave and Mike again for giving this fantastic webinar on attribution for B2B marketers.
Dave, thanks so much. It was a pleasure hosting you. I always have some takeaways and learning lessons, especially, Dave's actually under the weather right now, and we put him through a blistering, 45 minutes of talking straight. Thank you so much, Dave. It was a pleasure.
It was great. It was great to be here, and thanks so much everyone for joining and for AdStage for having me.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Bye.